Preparing. This meeting is being live streamed. There is no other way to go. Preparing. This meeting is being live streamed there. So here we are. Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube, and I should go and share it. Let's see how I'm going to share it. Ooh, moderation. Anybody help? Moderation helps everyone feel safe. Well, I would hope so. Yes, this is it. I got to share it. I'm now going to share it over there on all the other places. So I say, let's talk. Let's see what they're doing. Oh, you look, they gave me the broken flag. Because it is my whatever. It's got it up there like that. And then, so anyways, wanting to talk about what? This is 2023. And I thought that, before the end of the year, this being Las Vegas and all, but all the Black people and all the performers performing here, and, it's like they made it or something. And they're on the Strip, and Bruno Mars, and, just everybody wants to be here in Las Vegas, providing what you would call as entertainment. Entertainment for who? Well, it's just for the people. And here we are. This is 2023. Sharing a post. I'm going to share this in a post. Let's talk about, let's just gotta spell it right. And this is not for everybody, but just know this. It is happening. And the problem, and it's something that's happening, as no matter what you do, you're not going to trigger something different. I mean, let's all get it. Let's all understand. We live in America, and as an American citizen, the obligation, I'm trying to see, my watch is saying something bullshit. As an American citizen, okay, what are you doing? Most people aren't doing, and even if they have these meetings and they want to read the book, and there's lots of books we could read, but read a book. This one was my grandfather's, but it's a carpenter's building guide, and in it, it's so old, but it tells you how to sharpen your tools. It tells you how to build a house. It tells you a lot of things that you're not going to learn in a public education system right now, as failure has become the only option for so many people. And I say, goddamn, seriously? Failure? The letter grade of F? What does it mean? And then people say, oh, Facebook, and there's this guy that haunts me on Facebook. His name is Dean Green. And he's been acting like I'm the savior of the Black people, and I'm no more than he is. But the deal is that I have taken the opportunity to engage in the public process. And I had 3 sons, and all of my sons just got a high school diploma. Do you understand what I'm saying? We got that little piece of paper, and that little piece of paper is critical. And, my cousin, she realized it too, because her son was living over there in, Los Angeles. And, there's so many things that are going on, but you really just don't understand. If you don't get that little piece of paper that says a high school diploma, then you ain't got shit. And you'll just be struggling, because on the piece of paper that you're applying for the job, it says, did you graduate from high school? And you have to click the box. And when you lie, well, you lie. You understand? And you don't get to keep the job. And if you've been to prison, well, I'm sorry, you don't get to get the job. And it's so unfortunate that you can't be staying with your baby mama either, because it's just drama. And if she got Section 8, well, because you got a record, you can't stay there. And here we are. And, that's one of the reasons why I just didn't elect to get child support, because, I had a job. I was working. And it's unfortunate that they realize that they placed me in a liability situation. Kanye West is still in danger. They faked it. And now Ye was spotted. Oh, good thing. Ye's not gone anywhere. I mean, but the whole thing is that Kanye West is real. How do they want us to see him? Well, I'm not dumping him, and I'm 64. I think he's a young man. I think it's terrible that he's in a relationship with a woman who doesn't honor him as a man, the man of, her children's father. I mean, come on now. And he's paying her 200,000 a month, a whole month, $200,000 a month. This bitch got her own money. But hell, she decided who she was going to have children for. I think that they should just split custody, 6 months over here and 6 months over here, and then end that kind of fucked up relationship because, it is what it is. Seriously, what example is she providing for her young daughters? Sleeping with everything that walks, they got a winger, or kind of like that's what it's like. That's what's happening. But to each his own. Well, let me go over here and see what's on this side. I got to go over here. And what is, oh no, I shared that. So I have to go back over to here to YouTube where I am. There I am. Because I pushed paused over here. I'm not really seeing myself, but it's still recording. And let's see, I can share it. I shared it there. I can tweet it, and it really doesn't matter because who's paying attention? And the real deal is that, we have to understand this is where we have to be. Senator Antonio Hayes, he got his baby there, and his baby's wagging that flag. And I guess he was elected as a congressman representing. And that's the life we have to lead because it's our obligation to teach our children that, we pledge allegiance to the flag of these United States of America. And what does it mean if you have absolutely nothing to say about failed services that are being provided? And with all the children who look like you and I, this chocolate skin. I mean, when you fail to comply, you just die in America. Okay, it says a 5-year-old boy was pulled from the mother's arms in California. That was during that flood thing, And we were in California during the weather, and it was horrifying because the wind was just blowing and the trees were blowing over, and it's just real. But, hey, we all just have to understand that in America, it's us, and we're obligated for our behavior. And we are obligated for how we respond to failed public services. As a taxpayer, I want to know, what is it that you're doing? Because, here's one more. I missed one. Truly, I thought I was missing one, but I didn't know it. But the whole thing is that, here we are. And this is 2022. And the best thing about everything is the federal government is right on it. I mean, they've got that. So they have told the states they have the year of 21 and 22. 21 and 22 or 2021, whatever. Let's just go back over here and see. Because I gotta go over here. Then I gotta go to USA.gov. USA.gov. Oh, not that one. And, this live thing is real. I don't know. I don't think you can see, but I can see what I'm doing here. And I want to go to, yes, well, I don't know. Okay, let's see what it's saying right there. Disparate systems, disparate data, integration, interfaces, and standards in emergency medicine. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for disproportionality. I should say that. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Let me see. Racial disproportionality. And we should not even look here. We should go to racial disproportionality in the child welfare system. That's what it looks like. And disproportionality is children from different identity groups that are often represented disproportionately in the child welfare system and may receive disparate services resulting in the disparate outcomes. This section includes issues such as overrepresentation in the child welfare system, underrepresentation in the support services, and inequitable investigations in suspected cases of maltreatment and disparities in decision making. Additionally, this section provides resources on pursuing racial and LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transition, whatever, questioning, whatever other diverse inequities and equity in child welfare. Then, it goes in, it shows the data, but I'm wondering if you click this, is it going to show us the real data? It says the Child Welfare Information Gateway, please help us take this. They wanted me to take a survey. I say, ask me later, boo. Shit. And I don't know. They have a free PDF that you can download. And well, it's 31 pages. Let's just see what we can do here. I have to open it first. Download it. And then it open. Oh, I hope it can open because you know what? I fill my thing up, my drive. I'm gonna delete this shit. Let me see. Select all, and let's just see what we can hear or something.
Bulletins for Professionals, April 2021. Child welfare practice to address racial disproportionality and disparity. The child welfare field has moved from acknowledging the problem of systemic racial and ethnic disproportionality and disparity to formulating and implementing solutions. As jurisdictions and agencies evaluate their systems to identify where and how disproportionalities and disparities are occurring, they are increasingly seeking practices that use an anti-racist approach and show promise for their own populations. This bulletin provides a brief overview on the issue of racial disproportionality and disparity in the child welfare system and the factors that contribute to the problem. It then describes practices that child welfare caseworkers, administrators, program managers, and policymakers can implement to address these issues in general and at specific decision-making points along the child welfare continuum. What's inside the problem of racial disproportionality and disparity in child welfare? Contributing factors to racial disproportionality and disparity. System-wide strategies to address racial disproportionality and disparity. Casework strategies to address racial disproportionality and disparity. Conclusion. References: Children's Bureau ASIF ACF HHS 800-394-3366. Email: info@childwelfare.gov. https://www.childwelfare.gov. 1. The August-September 2020 special issue of Children's Bureau Express draws attention to the need for an anti-racist child welfare system that dedicates resources for enabling children and families of all races and ethnicities, and particularly those from marginalized communities, to achieve their full potential. The issue features guest articles from a range of leaders in the child welfare field, including voices from the public, private, philanthropic, and faith-based sectors. This bulletin was designed, in part, to present strategies that can be used in agency practice to directly answer the issue's call to action. Terminology: the terminology used to define and describe concepts related to race and ethnicity varies throughout child welfare and other fields. For the purposes of this publication, the following terms and definitions are used: disproportionality, the overrepresentation or underrepresentation of a racial or ethnic group compared with its percentage in the total population. Disparity, the unequal outcomes of one racial or ethnic group compared with outcomes for another racial or ethnic group. Racism, the systematic discrimination directed against minority or marginalized groups. Anti-racism, the active process of identifying and challenging racism by changing attitudes, policies and practices, organizational structures, and systems, with the goal of redistributing power in an equitable way. Cultural humility, the ability to maintain an openness to learning about other cultures. Cultural responsiveness, the ability to adapt one's behavior to the cultural needs of others. Families, children of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds. Families or children whose race or ethnicity is other than non-Hispanic, white only, e.g., African American, Hispanic, American Indian or Alaska Native. The problem of racial disproportionality and disparity in child welfare. A significant body of research has documented the overrepresentation of certain racial and ethnic groups in the child welfare system relative to their representation in the general population, e.g., Sennett et al., 2020, Ganasaraja et al., 2017, Wells, 2011. In 2019, American Indian and Alaska Native children made up 1% of the child population and accounted for 2% of the foster care population, while African American children accounted for roughly 14% of the Children's Bureau ASIF ACFHHS 800-394-3366. Email, info@childwelfare.gov https://www.childwelfare.gov. Child population and 23% of the foster care population. Annie E. Casey Foundation, 2020a. Children's Bureau, 2020b. That same year, white children made up half of the child population and just 44% of the foster care population. Although Hispanic children have historically been underrepresented in foster care at the national level, they were overrepresented in 20 states in 2018, when the most recent available data were collected. Pazanchera and Taylor, 2020. Racial disparities occur at nearly every major decision-making point along the child welfare continuum. At the national level, African American families are overrepresented in reports of suspected maltreatment, CRACE, 2013, and are subjected to Child Protective Services, CPS investigations at higher rates than other families. Kim, et al., 2017. In addition, African American and American Indian or Alaska Native children are at greater risk than other children of being confirmed for maltreatment and placed in out-of-home care. Yi et al., 2020. Families of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds also experience disparate treatment once they are involved with child welfare. Relative to other children, African American children spend more time in foster care, U.S. Government Accountability Office, 2007 and are less likely to reunify with their families, Liu et al., 2004, and compared with white children, they are less likely to receive services, Garcia et al., 2016. In addition, African American and American Indian or Alaska Native children are more likely than other children to be removed from their homes, McGuire Jack et al., 2020, and to experience a termination of parental rights, TPR, Wildman et al., 2020. Just as some racial and ethnic groups are overrepresented in the nation's child welfare system, other groups are underrepresented, particularly Asian children and, to a much lesser extent, Hispanic and white children. It is unclear whether underrepresentation is due to a lower occurrence of child maltreatment among these populations, or if it is caused by underreporting driven by either cultural norms or cultural perceptions that others, e.g., mandatory reporters, have about these groups. Chung and La Chapelle, 2011, McGuire Jack et al., 2015. Data collection limitations. When examining data and evidence pertaining to race and ethnicity, it is important to consider the challenges associated with collecting and analyzing these results. The following issues could impact data describing the numbers and rates of children of a particular race or ethnicity who are involved with the child welfare system. Race and ethnicity are not biological or scientific. People may identify their race or ethnicity based on a number of factors, e.g., family and social environment, historical or socio-political definitions, personal experience, and the definitions for a particular race or ethnicity may differ across studies or data collection efforts. U.S. Census Bureau, 2013. How people define their own race or ethnicity can change over time. Researchers found that more than 10 million people changed the identification of their race or ethnicity between the 2000 and the 2010 censuses. Cone, 2014. Children's Bureau ASIF ACFHHS 800 394 3366. Email, info@childwelfare.gov https://www.childwelfare.gov 3. Administrative data on race and ethnicity may be incorrectly assumed by the recorder. Without detailed assessment guidelines, recorders may rely on their own judgment when determining an individual's race or ethnicity, a scenario that can invite error. One study comparing the self-report race and ethnicity data of hospital patients against observational data found discrepancies in roughly 2/3 of cases. Palabriaginov et al., 2019. Identification during CPS intake can be especially problematic when determining whether children are American Indian or Alaska Native and thereby eligible for the Indian Child Welfare Act, ICWA, Love, 2016. Caseworkers often do not know to or do not routinely ask about tribal affiliation, or they make assumptions about ancestry based on physical attributes. Van Straten and Bookbinder, 2011. Recorder bias. In some instances, child welfare caseworkers may refrain from formally assessing a child's race or ethnicity. For example, when determining ICWA eligibility, a caseworker might avoid determining or recording that a child has American Indian or Alaska Native heritage because the agency must then get handwritten documentation that the child has tribal affiliation, a process that can incur extra work for the agency. Love, 2016. T. Lidded, Personal Communication, February 16, 2021. Despite these limitations, there is a wealth of data and analysis on this topic. For more information, see the following resources: National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, Disproportionality Rates for Children of Color in Foster Care, Fiscal Year 2015, Present State, Level Data and National Trends for Disproportionality by Race and Ethnicity at Various Decision-Making Points Along the Child Welfare Continuum, National Center for Juvenile Justice, Disproportionality Rates for Children of Color in Foster Care Dashboard, an interactive dashboard with disproportionality data by race and ethnicity for children in foster care, presented by state and fiscal year. Contributing factors to racial disproportionality and disparity. There are a variety of factors that may contribute to racial and ethnic disproportionality and disparity in the child welfare system. It is often difficult, however, to determine the particular aspects at either the system or the family and child level that have an effect and to what degree. Furthermore, the theories for why disproportionalities and disparities occur are, at times, conflicting. This may be due, in part, to demographic, practice, policy, and other differences at the national, state, and local levels, and to the fact that this is an exceptionally complex issue. Furthermore, child welfare research has not historically utilized an anti-racist approach and rarely includes the perspectives of those with lived experience. Keeping these conditions in mind, researchers in the field organize explanatory factors for racial disproportionality and disparity into the following overarching pathways. Boyd, 2015, Dedlaff and Boyd, 2021, Fluke et al., 2011. Disproportionate and disparate needs of children of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, particularly due to higher rates of poverty. Children's Bureau ASIF ACFHHS 800 394 3366. Email, info@childwelfare.gov https://www.childwelfare.gov 4. Racial bias and discrimination exhibited by individuals, e.g., caseworkers, mandated reporters, child welfare system factors, e.g., lack of resources for families of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, caseworker characteristics, geographic context, such as the region, state, or neighborhood policy and legislation, e.g., lack of measures targeting the needs of children of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, structural racism, e.g., historical policies and cultural dynamics. Disproportionate and disparate need. Children and families of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds may have a disproportionate need for child welfare services due to a range of factors that put them at greater risk for being reported for child maltreatment, most notably, poverty. While poverty does not equate to abuse or neglect, it is a risk factor that can interfere with a parent's ability to care for their children by restricting access to basic needs, such as housing, food, and health care. The stress of living in economic deprivation can also affect parenting capacity, resulting in inconsistent discipline, the inability to respond to a child's emotional needs, or a failure to prevent or address potential safety risks. Duve and Metzger, 2011. Research has firmly established an association between environmental, i.e., community or county poverty, and increased rates of substantiated child maltreatment, e.g., Eckenrode et al., 2014. Race contributes a level of complexity to this relationship. For example, national data on child maltreatment indicates that reporting rates for low-income white children are actually higher than for low-income Black or Hispanic children. Kim and Drake, 2018. Still, poverty is strongly related to minority status in the United States, with both African American and American Indian or Alaska Native children being about 3 times more likely than white children to live in poverty. Annie E. Casey Foundation, 2020b. For more information on the complex empirical relationship between poverty and neglect, see Addressing Poverty as a Major Risk Factor in Child Neglect, Promising Policy and Practice. Professionals in the child welfare field have also posited that poverty and other vulnerabilities experienced by families of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds may amplify their exposure to social services systems, e.g., financial or housing assistance, which may further increase their visibility to mandated reporters, a phenomenon often referred to as surveillance bias. Existing studies indicate that the effects of surveillance bias on reports of child abuse and neglect range from minimal, Chaffin and Bard, 2006, Drake et al., 2017, to non-existent, Kim et al., 2018. However, there may be other consequences for families of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds living in poverty that are subject to increased surveillance. For example, interviews conducted with African American families living in an impoverished area of Chicago found that CPS neighborhood presence interfered with parental authority and fostered distrust among neighbors. Roberts, 2008. Furthermore, once families in need are involved with the child welfare system, they are often referred for services. This increases the number of entities surveilling them, thereby potentially fostering apprehension and thwarting service engagement. Fong, 2020. Children's Bureau ASIF ACFHHS 800, 394-3366. Email, info@childwelfare.gov https://www.childwelfare.gov 5. Racial bias and discrimination. Human decision-making by mandated reporters, caseworkers, and other personnel may play a role in perpetuating poorer outcomes for families of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds who come into contact with the child welfare system. With disparities occurring at every major decision-making point along the child welfare continuum, implicit racial bias, i.e., unconscious attitudes and beliefs, and explicit racial bias, i.e., overt acts of discrimination and prejudice, may impact families of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds during reporting, investigation, substantiation, and out-of-home placement. Vague definitions of maltreatment and insufficient cultural responsiveness and cultural humility training for caseworkers allow subjectivity and bias to enter into case decision-making. Furthermore, families are often evaluated by individual caseworkers, rather than by committees that could mitigate bias through discourse. Biniwal, 2017. A small body of research from the medical field supports the racial bias pathway in child welfare reporting. For example, an examination of drug-positive newborns found that African American mothers were more likely than white mothers to be reported to CPS, despite the similarity of the overall health characteristics of their infants. Newspiel et al., 1993. More recently, researchers found that children from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds with head injuries were almost twice as likely to be reported for abusive head trauma than white children with similar symptoms. Hemo et al., 2018. However, an analysis of national-level child welfare data found that racial bias was not a large-scale driver of disproportionality at the referral phase of the continuum. Drake et al., 2011. While additional research is still needed to explore the precise role of racial bias in child welfare decision-making, large-scale studies conducted in other fields indicate that implicit and explicit biases toward African Americans are widespread. Nosik et al., 2002, and that racial biases may impact decision-making in service provision. Fitzgerald and Hurst, 2017. Child welfare system factors. Characteristics of the child welfare system may affect the services and outcomes for children of different races and ethnicities. Fluke et al., 2011. Factors at the agency level, including organizational culture and infrastructure, institutional racism, resource availability, and disengagement from the community served, can impact the frequency and quality of service provision, which in turn shapes case outcomes for children from overrepresented racial and ethnic groups. For example, a review of the child welfare agencies serving Santa Clara and Fresno counties in California identified several institutional features that negatively impact Hispanic children and families. Center for the Study of Social Policy, 2016. Specifically, the analysis revealed that the agencies did not have enough bilingual workers to meet the language needs of the populations they served, and the surrounding community lacked proactive, preventive, and accessible services. Geographic context. When examining data on racial disproportionality and disparity, higher level, e.g., national, trends may obscure differences that occur at lower levels. Findings from studies utilizing state-level data have confirmed that, while racial disproportionality exists nationwide, the populations impacted and the magnitude and types of disparity are unique to geographic location. U.S. Government Accountability. Children's Bureau ASIF ACFHHS 800-394-3366. Email, info@childwelfare.gov. https://www.childwelfare.gov. 6. Office, 2007b. Differences in disproportionality and disparity across geographies may reflect variations in child welfare policy and practice, historical circumstances, and a range of demographic, socioeconomic, and community factors found in specific regions across the country. Fluke et al., 2011. For example, one study found that African American, Hispanic, and white children living in diverse neighborhoods are more likely to be reported to CPS than children of their same race or ethnicity living in homogeneous neighborhoods. Klein and Merritt, 2014. Policy and legislation. A lack of policies targeting the needs of families of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, along with the presence of policies that negatively target these families, likely contribute to their increased involvement with the child welfare system. One important example of child welfare legislation that falls into this category is the Adoption and Safe Families Act, ASFA, which calls for timely permanency planning for children by requiring states to file for the TPR for any child who has been in foster care for 15 of the most recent 22 months. This legislation may disproportionately affect families of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds who struggle to reunify due to a lack of resources, unavailable or inaccessible services, and barriers to kinship care placements. White, 2006. ASFA may be especially harmful to the many children in the United States who are impacted by parental incarceration, a circumstance that disproportionately impacts African American families, with the average prison sentence spanning more than 1 year. Fast TPR timelines are often a significant barrier to reunification. For an in-depth look at the impact of ASFA on casework practice with specific populations, see the Urban Institute's Intentions and Results. A look back at the Adoption and Safe Families Act. Structural racism. Structural racism is the result of the accumulation of historical and cultural factors that have allowed racial inequities to endure and adapt over time. It is embedded in public policies, institutional practices, cultural representation, and other norms within and outside of the child welfare system, and it continues to shape modern-day determinants of well-being for families of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, including their disproportionate risk for child maltreatment. Dedlaff and Boyd, 2021. Some enduring consequences of structural racism include racial profiling in policing, disproportionate criminal sentencing, and poorer mental and physical health outcomes. One example that shows how structural racism can be linked to child maltreatment involves the systematic exclusion of African American families from home ownership. This exclusion can be traced back to housing policies enacted under the New Deal, when the Federal Housing Administration, FHA, refused to insure mortgages in African American neighborhoods, a policy called redlining. Gross, 2017. The FHA also issued a requirement that the suburban subdivisions that the organization was subsidizing must be off limits to African American families. These policies have had a long-lasting impact on economic inequities, in part because African Americans have historically been forced to live in higher poverty areas and because home ownership is a key means of building family wealth. Poverty, in turn, is a well-established risk factor for child maltreatment. Detlef and Boyd, 2021. For an in-depth look at structural racism in the child welfare system, see racial disproportionality and disparities in the child welfare system. Why do they exist? And what can be done to address them? Children's Bureau ASIF ACFHHS 800-394-3366. Email, info@childwelfare.gov https://www.childwelfare.gov 7. System-wide strategies to address racial disproportionality and disparity. The process of addressing racial disproportionality and disparity in child welfare should start at the systems level. It is critical for agencies to understand the root causes of these issues in their jurisdictions and to address system-wide challenges in order to lay the groundwork for effective casework practice. There are a number of promising practices for addressing disproportionality and disparity that can be implemented throughout the child welfare system and applied across multiple stages of the service continuum. Measuring racial disproportionality and disparities in child welfare systems. Racial disproportionalities and disparities are often driven by a range of factors related to demographics, casework practice, and agency policy. To determine the best strategies for addressing these issues at the local level, agencies should examine data sources on their service population, e.g., agency, educational, probational, and/or tribal data, to illuminate how key decision-making points along the continuum are impacting children of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds. Disaggregating agency data is a critical first step in analysis. This process involves breaking down datasets by key variables, e.g., race, ethnicity, ICWA eligibility, to expose trends that may be obscured by aggregated statistics. For an in-depth look at how disaggregating data can improve outcomes for children of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, see the Annie E. Casey Foundation's By the Numbers, A Race for Results case study, using disaggregated data to inform policies, practices, and decision-making. Once data are disaggregated, agencies can hone in on the decision-making points where disparities occur by using metrics such as the Disparity Index and the Relative Rate Index. Calculations explained in detail by the Annie E. Casey Foundation in the following companion works. A Child Welfare Leader's Desk Guide to Building a High-Performing Agency. 10 Practices Part 1 and 10 Practices Part 2. Making the Business Case. Research and references for 10 practices and appendices. Pinpointing disparities along the child welfare continuum, and doing so on a continuous basis, allows agencies to develop targeted practice and policy solutions that are tailored to the culture, strengths, and challenges of specific communities. It is important to note that any data analysis conducted by an agency should draw on the expertise of the impacted population, those with lived experience. Agencies should collaborate with these families impacted by racial disproportionality and disparity in order to inform the development of research questions, data collection methods, and approaches for interpreting their findings. The goal for this type of collaboration is for the agency to develop a more nuanced understanding of the problems and their root causes and to engage in collective efforts to design and sustain strategies to address them. Children's Bureau ASIF ACFHHS 800-394-3366. Email, info@childwelfare.gov https://www.childwelfare.gov 8. Agency Policy Review and Revision. Reviewing agency policies on a regular basis can ensure that child welfare practice supports equity for all children and families. Agencies can take the following steps when examining their policies and practices in terms of racial and ethnic equity. Darazodes, 2006. T. Lidded, Personal Communication. February 16, 2021. Invest in assessments, training, and technical assistance for cultural responsiveness. Develop ways to measure racial equity in agency programs and outcomes. Identify and track agency goals by racial and ethnic groups. Determine the unique needs of children and families of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds and identify practices that will better serve them. Involve members of impacted communities in the review and revision process. Formal operational structures, such as task forces or committees, can greatly assist efforts to assess how agency policies affect disproportionality and disparities and to enact system changes. A review of racial equity efforts across the country found that these structures were most successful when they were operated out of, or reported directly to, the executive leader's office, as well as when they engaged other institutions and community members. Miller and Dissenstad, 2015. The following are examples of state and local efforts. Fresno County Department of Social Services, confronting racial inequities and disproportionality to improve child welfare outcomes for children and families. Fairfax County, Virginia. 1. Fairfax Countywide Plan. Indiana Disproportionality Committee. Texas Center for Elimination of Disproportionality and Disparities. Although the center is now closed, its website was still active as of February 2021. To assist agencies that are experiencing challenges around assessing disproportionality, the National Association of Public Child Welfare Administrators, NAPCWA, developed the Disproportionality Diagnostic Tool. See the NAPCWA Resources section of the American Public Human Services Association website, which allows users to identify gaps, areas for improvement, and agency strengths that can support equitable representation. Additionally, the Center for the Study of Social Policy partners with child welfare agencies to perform institutional analyses, which assess contributing factors to disproportionality and disparity at various levels, including systems theories, practices, policies, and procedures. The institutional analysis process also identifies opportunities to improve and mobilize interagency collaboration within the served community. To learn more, visit the Institutional Analysis section of the Center for the Study of Social Policy website. Statewide legislation and policy. Federal policy allows states a high degree of flexibility in the development of their child welfare policies. Therefore, legislation and policies can be shaped to address systemic issues and meet the needs of children and families of diverse racial and ethnic. Children's Bureau ASIF ACF HHS 800-394-3366. Email, info@childwelfare.gov. https://www.childwelfare.gov. 9. Backgrounds.
Right.
Martin and Connolly, 2015. States can take the following steps toward developing legislation and policies that ensure all families have access to the services and supports needed to keep children safely at home. Research practices and programs and release findings to the public. Published findings will ensure that policies and programs that are effective at reducing disproportionalities and disparities are labeled as evidence-based and can be tailored for multiple jurisdictions. Invest in early interventions, services and supports designed to target issues that disproportionately impact children and families of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, e.g., poverty, incarceration, may be especially effective at preventing child welfare involvement for these families. Encourage and support cross-system collaboration. Prioritize diverse partnerships within child welfare and between child welfare and other public systems.
Oh, wow. I hate they stop that shit. Let's see if I start speaking again. Oh, no. Well, anyways, this is a whole document, and you can just go and find it. Child welfare practices to address racial disproportionality and disparity. And the obligation is that we figure this shit out. And how are we going to figure it out? Especially when we don't understand. I'll stop to share what's going on. So the word is in 2023, what are you going to do? Hopefully you will join with me in investigating the failure of public education, as we are all Americans. And it is what we are willing to do, not necessarily what we're doing. So I will say, like, subscribe, follow me here I'm on YouTube, Darlene Anderson 1958, or you can follow me and find me on Anchor. Parent Empowerment Hour, what the hell? Or just find me on Wisdom, Darlene Anderson, or find me on Facebook, Darlene Phillips Anderson. But wake up in 2022. Thank you for spending your time with me, and I'm about to log off, y'all.